Sometimes people just click in wrestling. I shouldn't have done it. I mean, there's always a journey behind it, but you know the deal. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Hulk Hogan. You even get flashes in the pan like the Ultimate Warrior. Like for a little while, he was setting the world on fire, but when we put him front and center of sports entertainment, that didn't really work. You also get the long runners, such as Bryan Danielson, who has just been so damn good for such a long period of time. Everybody eventually just goes shrug emoji, well, we got to give him his flowers. But there's another person who from day one has not only been a superb professional wrestler, but has changed the game, and now WWE are struggling to replace. Why? Here's why. But this superstar is genuinely one of the best wrestlers ever and will forever be one of the best wrestlers ever. And I'm sure you already know, because it's probably in the thumbnail, it's Rey Mysterio. Now, in case you don't know, Rey is one of the first guys to open the door into what we know wrestling to be today. When he first arrived at WCW, because of his size and his small stature, do you know what most of the locker room did? They went, ha ha, look at that little child, how is he ever going to get over? And where are most of those people now? We don't even know. But I know where Rey Mysterio is. Smashing it. I mean, he has become such an influence. For the past 2 decades, we've heard the phrase, oh, WWE is looking for their next Rey Mysterio. And of course, we can bring Eddie Guerrero into that conversation as well. But sadly, we know all that tragic tale. It probably would have been Eddie Guerrero, but let's not worry about it. The point is, we haven't done it at all. And what we are talking about here is a Mexican wrestler that appeals to that demographic or that market. Because you can see the numbers as well. When you do have somebody like this, the Latina audiences tune in their droves. This makes all the sense in the world because representation is important. Doesn't matter what your background is, your color or religion. If you can see somebody on a screen and you can relate to them, you're like, well, there's my guy. I mean, it's why the LWO merchandise is selling like crazy, even though they were a joke back in World Championship Wrestling. They're not entirely doing that much on SmackDown. I mean, I've already explained this. It's not like we haven't had talented performers either. I just think WWE doesn't realize that people like Rey Mysterio or Eddie Guerrero are lightning in the bottle. And to try and get up to their standard, well, you would have to arrive in wrestling, and most people say, I think they could be the greatest person ever. But it does help business and boost the bottom line, which is what wrestling is all about when you break it right down. And given that Rey did go into the Hall of Fame in 2023 and is approaching 50 years old, you'd have to imagine sooner rather than later his career will come to an end. I mean, he still remains brilliant in the ring, could probably go for a few more years, but it means that WWE are stroking their fake beards going, well, what do we do when Rey leaves? I actually don't think there's an answer. I mean, it doesn't help that Mysterio's story is amazing too, because he started wrestling at 14 years of age and he didn't get his break until Paul Heyman said, this is pretty damn talented, you can come work for ECW. Eric Bischoff then caught wind of this, and within 12 months Rey was in WCW, and all you need to know about that is you can go and watch the match he has with Guerrero at 1997's Halloween Havoc, and it is as good today as the day as it was written. You could put this in 2023 and nobody would blink an eye, and it would still be one of the best matches of the year. And the real shame is that WCW then became obsessed, and I mean obsessed with unmasking him, which they did in 1999, and now that was pretty good. That was 1999. I ain't gonna worry about that now. It's 20 years ago. The promotion then shut down, which begged a massive question. Would WWE actually hire Rey? Because of course, especially back then at the turn of the century, it was absolutely the land of the giants. Even then though, Jim Ross had an inkling and he told him, you've got to put the mask back on. And why did they do that? Because of course, WWE then went out and probably sold 10 gajillion of these, and WCW didn't even try. And we wonder why they went out of business. WWE also knew they had to present Rey Mysterio as a special attraction, which is what they did do on SmackDown, and the results were totally insane, because he was doing things that some people have never seen before. And he was actually like a superhero, so within about 3 days, all the kids would go, well, I want a Rey Mysterio mask, because you know what children like? Spider-Man. And do you know who Rey Mysterio was like? You can figure it out. I mean, he got so over, he was even given a world title reign, and even 10 years prior to that, it would have been absolutely impossible, so you can see the legacy that he's left on this industry. And he didn't let the stereotypes of wrestling hold him back, and in fact, he got to the tippity top, and only one guy can do that for the first time. It was Rey, so how can you expect anybody to follow that? I mean, you just can't. Mysterio also totally understood that he could use his body and he could use his size to his advantage and become the big little underdog man, or whatever the hell Michael Cole calls him. But eventually it led to feuds with Batista, Randy Orton, Kurt Angle. And do not forget that when it came to Big Dave, he was exactly that. He was a big guy and he was called Dave, but did anybody in the crowd go, oh, I don't believe it? No, because who did we support and who were we all in love with? Rey Mysterio. I keep repeating myself. The most ridiculous stat is that WWE has been trying to do this for ages, which is why a while back you may remember Alberto Del Rio and his mega push. I mean, just go and read the news at the time. All of WWE personnel were going, oh, we found it. We found Rey Mysterio #2, and here he is. And it did make sense too, because not only was he the son of Don Callis, he was the nephew of Mil Maracas, and he was big and jacked. So everybody at WWE, oh my gosh, we've hit the jackpot now. It's like we've taken Rey and we've given him super serum. We went full in with this too, because Alberto won the Royal Rumble in 2011, then he was Mr. Money in the Bank. And of course, he cashed in on CM Punk at SummerSlam. The less said about that, the better. I mean, he was a made man within 6 months until all of a sudden, he wasn't. Like, I kind of do feel like the powers that be pushed him into his face turn well too early. And this is when you kind of get the divide. When we go back to Rey, he organically got over because he just got something about him. But Alberto was just shoved down our throats until we went, and we vomited him back up. So you're never going to be able to compete with that organic connection. This was proven very quickly. Because do you remember that cash-in by Dolph Ziggler that just so happened to be on Alberto Del Rio? Even though Ziggles was the bad guy, everybody went crazy. In terms of the modern era, we got one of the best reactions ever. There was then some backstage controversy in 2014 and Del Rio got fired. And when he came back, he had that weird Mex America gimmick with Zeb Coulter. And look what it's done to my body, I'm slowly shutting down. He then moved on to the League of Nations, and by 2016 it was time to say goodbye. And look, let's just be honest with it never really worked. Incredibly, while this was all happening, we had another person in the mix, which was Triple H's first major signing. I am, of course, talking about Cara. Now, the former Mystico had been amazing down in Mexico, and of course, he was a masked wrestler. But we all know the tale here. For some reason, when he got to WWE, he couldn't adapt to their style, so he did make a lot of mistakes. Now, look, everybody does make mistakes. You can't help it. But when you're meant to be a super-duper flying machine, and instead you got and fall on your face, well, that ain't gonna work. He soon started to get injured too, and he fell out with management, to the point everybody decided, well, we like the gimmick, but we don't like the person behind it. So they just switched roles. And of course, because you couldn't see his face, unless you were a nerd like me, nobody would be none the wiser. Now, he was able to shift some serious merchandise, but you know how most individuals saw him as just another Rey Mysterio? It's not in a good way, I mean in a negative way, which is exactly what WWE wasn't trying to do. That does basically tie back into the point of this video. You did replace him, and all the audience decided, now we'd rather have the original. Andrade was another guy that absolutely could have stepped into this role, but you know the deal. Down in NXT, it was absolutely there, and then he got called up to the main roster. Vince McMahon didn't see it. Before long, he was in tag team matches, and I think his win-loss record went loss, fired. It was ridiculous. And all that did was tell the wider audience they shouldn't care about him, so I'll give you 5 seconds to work out what happened. That's right, nobody cared. Like how my mother feels about me. The real irony is that for a little while, WWE did go all in on Rey Mysterio versus Andrade, and they had that amazing match on SmackDown, and they had another one a few weeks after that, but this still wasn't enough to convince anyone, which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. 2 + 2 = potato. Rey also was victorious in many of those, and you know the deal. If you want to become the new king, you gotta slay the old king, and he didn't. I'm not sure we need to say much about the Lucha House Party, and even if we do skip forward to 2023, we do have the mentioned LWO, and we do have Santos Escobar, and while they're all very talented folk, I mean, just look at the lay of the land. Does it feel like they're gonna get a big push? No. The real ha-ha is that it's not even going to be Rey's own son. Because Dominic Mysterio did come into the business as a super mega babyface, but as soon as he joined the Judgment Day and realized, oh man, I'm a much better heel, he has now stepped out of Daddy's shadow and he's walking on his own path. Now, I think he's going to go on to super duper stardom, but once again, he ain't going to be your happy-go-lucky, oh my gosh, I want to give you a hug guy. He's gonna be a dick. I really do think he could be a bad guy for absolutely ages. He's so good, and he's such a coward. So I do believe what this video has taught us is the one lesson you should never bring into your own life it's probably time to give up. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's like trying to come up with something better than the wall. I'm looking at a wall over here. You can't come up with something better than the wall. It was invented to be a wall, and it's been a wall ever since. It's about time we decided, Roman Reigns can just be the brand new John Cena. That failed miserably because Roman had to be the first Roman. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but this is what we should be doing now. Put Rey on the pedestal that he has earned. Try and find somebody else that can appeal to this audience. They're going to have to do something different. I mean, I just don't think there's any more wiggle room in the industry to totally revolutionize it, because that's already happened now. It's just the nature of life. It probably likely means that you're better off layering your roster with a bunch of depth and a bunch of talent that does reach out to people. Sometimes I wonder if WWE actually does want to do that, or if they're just ticking boxes. That's another chat for another day. One day Rey Mysterio will be gone too, and as we've learnt on Retro Ups and Downs, which have come back recently, so make sure you go and watch it, you can basically go to any era over the last 30 years, and Rey is doing something amazing. So he is just getting a massive round of applause from me. If you came in here right now and said, Simon, I think he's the best ever, I probably couldn't argue it, even if I had facts. That's how good he is. Now look, it's time for you to get in the comments and answer two questions. One, do you think there's anybody out there who can replace Rey Mysterio? And two, should WWE even be trying anymore? Because we did mention Retro Ups and Downs. Money in the Bank 2010 is on the screen right now. Give it a click and we can go down that journey and like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com. We should keep you up to date with all the latest wrestling news. And we're on social media. If you want to come call me a penis head for some reason, it's at SimonRitter316. But be nice to @WhatCultureWWE. Throw your hate my way. My name is Simon for What Culture. As you can probably tell, I'm a massive Rey Mysterio fan, but wrestling is super duper hard, and he makes it look super duper easy, even though he's like 46 years old. The man is a marvel and an absolute legend.